Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is watering day. Actually, it is past watering day. So we need to go around and water everybody. And this is one of the biggest things that a lot of people struggle with. And so I thought it was a really good opportunity for me to just kind of walk you through me and my process of watering and how I go about checking to see if they need water. Don't get me wrong, I have definitely rotted my fair share of roots, but for the most part, I have some things in place that help prevent doing this. And so I just wanted to kind of share these tips with you. I just want to say really quick that nobody's perfect. Overwatering a plant is a very easy thing to do. So yeah, so the first thing that I think that I need to talk about that's probably one of the most important things is the soil that you use. You definitely want to make sure that you have a super fast draining soil, and that is what I have. And so I'm gonna just walk over here and show you. So I have two different types of soil. I have a specific aeroid soil, and then I have more of a chunky general purpose soil that I mix together for ferns, calatheas, things like that need a little bit more of a denser substrate because they like to stay moist longer. So just the really chunky soil, just because it's moisture retaining, but it also allows the roots to breathe. And so I think for me, that's a big difference in why I'm able to have so many and not kill, and my ratio of killing versus survival is more in favor of the survival. So let me just show you what my soil looks like. So this is my chunky soil. It's got a mixture of a lot of chunky stuff, as you can see. And so I generally, and then I mix it up a little bit so that the heavier stuff that falls to the bottom, you just want to mix it up when you do that. But yeah, so this is my chunky soil that I use for most of my aeroids. And then over here you can see is a little bit more dense. Maybe it's hard to tell in video form, but it's got a little bit more of the cocoa core in it to make it a little bit more moisture retaining. The soil is your number one thing that is going to, I want to say, make or break your plant journey. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a really chunky soil. A lot of people don't know. I didn't know for a while until I figured it out, until I did my little researching and stuff, that roots need air, they need oxygen, and if you're using a really compacted soil that's compacting around the roots, and then you add that water in there, it basically just drowns them, it suffocates it. And so that's a lot of the reason why people have root rot. So yeah, so aeration. And we're gonna get into that more later in the video. But yes, so basically what I do, because I'm bougie, I like rainwater, so I collect rainwater, but then I also add Super Thrive into that to just bump up the nitrogen and vitamins and minerals. And then once a month I fertilize with just a standard fertilizer. So, but yeah, okay, all of the jib jab, all of I don't know what I'm trying to say, but all of that out of the way, I'm gonna just kind of walk you through and show you how I test to see if a plant needs water or not. So here we go. These guys right here are my secret weapons, and you might be looking at this and being like, what the heck? But yeah, a skewer, a wooden skewer, and a condiment container. I had to think about what that was called. And yes, as you can see, there are some bugs in there. That's, it's just part of the process. I think when I get a little bit more fancier, I'm gonna create a catch system to catch the rain that doesn't catch everything else with it too. So, but again, that's a video for another day. So, but yeah, so I have oh my God, I can't say this, a condiment container, and a wooden skewer. And I use this every time I water my plants. So let's go to it. So here's my first plant. We're going to check. So basically, I do two things. I check the soil with my fingers, and sometimes when you have the really chunky soil, it's kind of hard to tell how wet the soil is. But I can feel that it's a little damp. And then if that's where the skewer comes into play here, if you're not, if you feel like you're not really sure, the rule of thumb is you try to find where the root ball is, and you stick the skewer down in there. Don't be afraid to jab it. And if you pull it up, it's kind of hard to sell. I probably should have got a cleaner, a completely clean one, but you can tell by how much soil comes on to the skewer. So you can see that there really wasn't, you know, a lot of soil that was stuck to it. Let's see if the camera will focus. There we go. So yeah, again, I know that looks it's kind of hard to tell, but when I show you one that's been watered here in a second, you'll understand. So I know that this guy needs water. The reason why I use a condiment bottle is because I feel like I can control more of like how much water goes in there. And so I just like do a little squirt. You know, once a month, I would say, I do a nice like bath. You can tell we haven't had our bath yet, but once a month I do a nice little bath and do like a complete drench. But for the most part, I just kind of like test the soil on like how heavy it feels as to how much like water that I would give it. Here is my Hawaiian Thai tree, and this will actually probably be a little bit more easier for you guys to see when I go to water it. But yes, so this has a little bit less of a chunkier soil. You can see it's more of like your normal soil that you would have. And so here we go with the finger test, and it is, you know, stick your finger in there about 2 inches deep, and you should be able to like feel the moisture. And as you can see, no dirt like came up, and so I know that that's dry. And again, if you were to do that with the skewer, same situation. This is like, the skewer is like if you don't really want to stick your finger in there, or maybe you're just having like a hard time. Like I like to stick my finger in there, and then I also sometimes, if I'm not really sure, I'm like, oh, let me get the skewer and try that too. So you can see I stick that down in there, and no dirt comes back onto the skewer. And so now I know that I need to water her. You know, in a perfect world, we would be able to get all of our plants on like a schedule, but reality is these guys, you can't do that. But in a perfect world, that would be nice. Alrighty, on to the next. Now we're gonna come back in here and do a refill, and don't judge me on my studio. It is a mess right now. And I would say that is one of the downfalls of using a condiment container, is that I do have to refill it quite often, but it's a small price to pay to have like more control over the water that I use. And you know, that's just what I do. So here we are trying to do this one-handed. All right, we have these guys over here. We're gonna test. Okay. And like I have to, like my hand feels wet from where I was just using that, so I have to like dry it off a little bit, so I'm not having like a fake positive. All right, so here we go. So sticking my finger, you know, and that feels like a little, like it feels a little damp, so I'm not really sure, you know, a little bit of that soil comes back up on there. So I'll test another area. You know, I don't want to like disturb the roots too much. And so that's like one of those moments where I'm like, it feels kind of moist down in there. Let me check with the skewer, because I'm just not really sure. Oh, let me wipe that off and try that again. You know, again, sometimes like touching the wood too will help. You know, is it wet, is it not? So it's not as like dry. It's not as dry as some of the other guys were. So this is where I would go in and I would just lightly give it a little bit of water, not too much. And that's the thing too, like you can always come back from an underwatering. It's harder to come back from an overwatering. And so I kind of err on the side of less is more. So yeah, like this feels a little moist, like, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we haven't had a lot of sunshine this past week. So these guys are like doing okay. But you can also kind of tell, like your plants will talk to you, like the tips will start to turn a little brown or a little yellow when they need water. So again, same situation with this guy. I still want to water it. I'm just not going to do a lot. So I'm just going to do little squirts in there. I feel like when we use like some of the bigger like rain, I don't know what they're called, but you know, like the pitchers that you like pour, I feel like so much water comes out of that like it's harder to control. So I don't like to use those. So another method that I also like to use when I am, you know, watering, I like to combine like all of them, is I use like the weight test too. So like this girl here, like I can feel that and feel that there's like there's no water in there. Like it's, you know, as opposed to like filling one that you just watered. Or basically, I guess, let me try to explain that a little bit more where it makes more sense. So like, you know, get really comfortable, get really familiar with the way that your pots fill, you know, before you water them and then after you water them. So I'm just gonna squirt this in here so that you can always do like the weight test too. Like there's a bunch of things that you can do in combination together to just kind of ensure. And so like, I know what this felt like when I first watered, like before I watered it. And now like, I know what it feels like when it has water. And so that will also help you figure out when your plants need water. So we're just gonna sprinkle a little bit of water. One of my other like favorite tips that I've started to integrate into my planting journey is these clear nursery pots. I've been putting them like the plants that I sell, but also like trying to integrate all of my personal plants into having these, because I feel like if you can see what's going on in there, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to also control the watering situation. I feel like my brain's like all over the place today. But yes, so like if you're using like clear containers, as you can see that there's condensation in there, and you can also kind of like see the color of the dirt, and that makes a difference when it's wet versus when it's dry. As you can see that the color of the soil is darker, so I don't need to water her. I can also see some of the condensation. I don't know if the camera is really picking that up well for you, but you can kind of see here there's like some condensation going on. Oh, let's see. Yeah, there's some condensation going on. So I know that there's moisture in there and I don't need to water her. So that is one of the reasons why I really love these clear plastic nursery pots. Well, first of all, I can feel how heavy it is, and so I know that it's gonna need a little bit of water. Again, that weight test makes a huge difference. Let's see if I can get over here. Oh my gosh, girl. So yeah, so like, you know, there's also that visual, like you can visually see. Oh my God, let me see if I can try to get my hand in here better. She's a big girl. Okay, so let's see if you can kind of see, like you can tell that that looks dry on the top, but that can always be deceiving. So you stick your finger down in there and you know, that is dry. Like the dirt feels dry. Even though it's like a little bit of moisture in there, that's still considered dry. Again, if you're not 100% sure, you do the skewer test and that's dry. And I'm gonna show you here in a second, like what it would look like if it was wet. Okay, thank you. Why don't you go water that guy over there? Yep. Oh, nice, you're getting it everywhere. Let's get the towel. Clean it up over there. Get it over there. Good job. I'm gonna check. So like I don't know if you can really convey that on video, but like that is super light. So like I don't even have to stick my finger in there. I already know that we need some water just by the weight of that. After I water it, like I can kind of see what that feels like to know if I've put enough in there, but also like to just familiarize myself again with what it feels like when it's got water in it. Okay, so this would be a really good example. These are some new plants that I just got for this shop. Let's see if I can find one that has, okay, so you can also like tell, so I can visually see that soil is, I don't know, oh, I feel like it's not really picking up on the camera. I can visually see and I can touch the top of the soil to tell the difference and whether or not that's wet or not. I know that feels different than what my other guys feel like. But I also wanted to show you like an example of the skewer. So here we are, clean skewer. If I stick this down into there and then I pull it back up and there's like some dirt. Florida girl. All right, let's see. So I stick that in there. And maybe if I just do the other end, that might be a little bit more visually understanding. So you can see that that's clean. And of course, like I don't advise using a clean stick every single time, but you know, it's a little bit more of a renewable resource, so if you must. But you can see that like no dirt came off on that. As opposed, let's try this girl. If I stick it down into this, you can see
you can see that there's moisture on the stick, but also that there's wet soil on there.
Okay, so I do understand that that could be kind of difficult to see on camera. I feel like it's not coming through like I was hoping that it would, but I really do encourage you to test it out yourself, to get you like a skewer or a popsicle stick or something that is wood that you can stick down into your pots to help test, like to help you like see the difference in what, you know, damp or wet soil looks like versus what dry soil looks like. And, you know, it's not always going to be completely bone dry unless it is a specific plant that, you know, prefers to go bone dry before you water it again. But it is a situation of like just kind of, you know, familiarizing yourself with your plants, like developing that relationship with them. And like you'll end up knowing your plants, like, you know, your pets and, you know, your kids. Like, you know, it might sound crazy for some people, but it's true. Like, I know my plants, and so I know when a certain plant doesn't look right. I know when a certain plant is looking like it needs some water, just visually. And then like when you get familiar with like the soil and what your soil looks like when it's wet, what the pot feels like when it's wet, it's gonna make a huge difference in your watering routines. And, you know, for the most part, I'm on a weekly right now in the winter, like a weekly watering. I know in about 7 to 10 days, I'm gonna need to water everybody. I do have some plants that are extra thirsty, and so like I know that I have to water them more and give them more attention. It's gonna change in the summertime. Everything's different, so it's just kind of like getting used to everybody. And right now with the warm, dry air, I feel like the soil is drying out more. But then like this past week, it's been very rainy and cloudy, and so there hasn't been that much sun, and it's also not really been super high temperatures. So I feel like the moisture in the soil has lasted longer than what I thought it was going to be. I thought a lot of these guys were going to be a lot more drier than they are. So, you know, that plays into factor too. So that's why you can't just put yourself on a regimen and say, okay, every 7 days or every 5 days, I'm going to water all my plants, because, you know, environmental changes make a huge difference in your plants, in the soil and the conditions. And so like in a perfect world, we would be able to do that. We would be able to have a schedule on a calendar that we could be like, oh, it's time to water my plant. But like, it just doesn't work that way. There's a roundabout times, but for the most part, like, you know, they don't work that way. You can't really put them on a strict routine. But yeah, so I'm not gonna make you guys like follow me around while I water everybody. This is not that type of video. But I did want to quickly show you before I end this video some of the other nursery pots that I have, that I started to use them when I sell plants. Sorry, I'm just like looking at my greenhouse cabinet, making sure everybody looks okay in there. That I feel like is going to make a huge difference for people who are buying plants from me, because a lot of times people are, you know, they want to be plant parents, and they're like, I kill my plants. Like, what plant can I have that's hard to kill? You know, I feel like there are some that are temperamental, but for the most part, I feel like most of the guys that I carry and that I have are fairly easy. It's just, you know, I would say the only thing that would make it more difficult is whether or not they need humidity. So, but anyways, I want to make, you know, I want everyone to have plants and to love plants and enjoy plants. So I try to make it a little bit easier for people that are buying from me. So I just want to show you, let me just stop all the chit chatting and tottering. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I feel like I'm going in circles. Okay, yeah, I got some over here that'll be good to see. So there's some dry ones, and then there's also some wet ones. So I'll be able to show you what the difference looks like for those pots.
These are, I really do love these pots. I got them on Amazon. I will try to find the link for you guys and link that in the description if you want them. They were like a really good deal, and they're like hard, like they're not squishy like the squishy kinds, but you can kind of see what this looks like. You can see the moisture in there, so you see how it's, you know, there's that difference in the way that that looks versus the way that that looks. Now this guy was just watered, so it's a little bit moist, but it's not, you know, as wet. And also, like, again, feeling the difference in like the way that it feels. This one here is very, you know, not very dry, but it is dry. It's gonna need a watering here soon. Again, here too, you can see these other clear ones that I use these two because those are only like 3-inch sizes, and these come in like 3, 4, and 5, I want to say. But you can see, I love how I can see the roots. I love how I can see the the color of the soil, so it makes a huge difference. And knowing when that plant needs water, I can just look at it. And so, but yeah, so I wanted to show you guys kind of like what that looks like when that's on a little bit on the drier side. This guy right here I just watered. You can see, let's see if I can turn that around. Yeah, so you can see that is wet. Like I can look at that and say, I do not need to water that plant. I don't even have to touch the soil. I can tell by looking at it. So that's what I love about these pots. And honestly, if you have clear pots yourself, you know it's a game changer. You can even use like, you know, if you got small plants that you're propagating, I like the little plastic cups because again, I can see what it looks like. Okay, so yeah, let me pull some. So these, you know, I'm not overwatering this plant. This is definitely a plant that needs water, but I just kind of wanted to water one so that you can see what it looks like when I water it and what the pot, which I would normally have put more water in there, but you can see, look at that. Completely changed it. So now I know, like, just by looking at that. I swear by the clear pots. So if like you are someone that struggles with overwatering your plants, or even underwatering, because like the clear pots are just, I mean, that would be like my big number one thing. Like if you didn't change anything in your plant routine, I would say change that. Because that makes a huge difference, honestly. Let me show you. I was trying to show you what condensation looked like, and I don't think I had a good one that was like good to show you, but let me see if this, yeah. I think you can see that. I think that the camera is picking that up. Yeah, so you can see these clear pots with the condensation. Like I know when I look at that pot that it does not need to be watered. So again, I can just go on for days about the pots and how much I love them and how much changing those made a difference in my own personal like routine, but also when I sell plants, like that's my big thing that I try. That's like my extra thing for people that buy plants from me is like, you're gonna, for the most part, you're gonna get it in a clear pot because I know what it feels like to kill a plant with overwatering. So hopefully that helped. I think that's it for today's video. I feel like I was a little chaotic as normal, so you know, I don't feel like I did everything I was wanting to do in this video, but I think for the most part, that is it. Those are my tips for watering. Hopefully it comes through the way that I thought it should. Let's just think for a second. Make sure I got everything that I needed to say. Actually did forget one more tip for you guys where the skewer comes into play aside from checking the wetness of the soil. So an extra thing that you can add to your routine is once a month while you're watering, you know, poke holes into your soil so that it adds aeration. You don't have to do a lot of them, but just kind of, you know, a few times poke in there. Don't be afraid to, you know, hit roots. It's not going to harm it. Another thing that you can do is also just give it a little squeeze like this, and then that'll just kind of, you know, break up some of that compacted soil that happens after, you know, repetitive watering. But it'll help with the flow of the water as well as adding some aeration to your soil. Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. My big takeaways from here is you can come back from an underwatering way easier than you can come back from an overwatering. So if you are still worried about it, err on the side of less is more. You know, get you a watering can of some sort, a watering vessel of some sort that helps control how much water is going onto these plants. I'm still learning too, so like some days when I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure if that plant needs water, but I think it does. It's been a while since I've watered it. I'll just like sprinkle a little on the very top of the soil because I know that, you know, gravity's going to take its course and it's going to come down into there anyways. So yeah, just like, you know, do a little swoosh at the top and you'll be okay. Switch to some clear pots. You know, if you are not really sure about it and you don't want to spend the money on buying new pots, if you get some, like, if you have clear plastic cups, you can do that too. You can use those too, poke some holes in the bottom of it, make sure it's got drainage holes. I can't express enough is to make sure, please make sure that your pots have drainage holes. That was your number one guaranteed thing to happen is with root rot is if you do not have drainage. I know it's tempting to put plants in like these beautiful vessels that
don't have holes in them. But you know, if you have something that you really love and you want to put a plant in it, like get a nursery pot and put it in that, or you know, get some kind of, they make drill bits that you can like drill holes into like crystal and glass and things like that. So, but all in all, please make sure it has a drainage hole. Use a little skewer to test. Use the finger. They do sell moisture meters. I've had mixed reviews. I mean, I've read mixed reviews from a bunch of different people who do plant stuff on whether or not it's accurate. I don't use it. I haven't bought one because I'm a little on the cheap side. I'm just kidding. That's not really why. I mean, it is partially why, but not really why I don't use it. But I just like figuring out the number and where the plant needs to be and all that. It just seems a little too confusing for me. I can just use my finger or a wood skewer. And I feel like it really does the job just as good. I think there's no, you know, I don't know that there is any replacement for like real life touching, feeling type situation, but I don't know. I could be wrong. If you use a moisture meter and that works great for you, please let me know in the comments, because like I'm always down for trying new stuff. And I mean, you know, if there's something easier out there to make our lives easier, I'm 100% down for it. I will replace the skewer for a moisture meter. So, but let us know if you've tried it before and it works for you. Let me know in the comments. That's it for today's video, everyone. I know it's been a while since I've done a plant video because, again, we're in the podcast season and that takes up all of my extra time. But yeah, so that is coming to a wrap in a few weeks. So I'll have more time to do more plant videos. But if you haven't already, check out the podcast. I highly recommend it. It is very empowering. We have incredible women on each week that share their amazing stories of transformation. I get excited. You can see the smile on my face when I talk about it. So I do love the podcast. It just takes up a lot of my extra time. And, you know, I've been busy selling plants and doing all the fun things. And we can hear my kid in the background making art. But yeah, that's it. If you like this video, if you found value in it, please let me know by giving me a like. Subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. And of course, don't forget to give yourself some love this week and buy yourself a plant. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.